Welcome. In front of me I have the Motorola Moto E22, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview of this phone. So anyway, let's just get straight into it. It's a single seal. There we go. Now, unlike the typical Motorola fashion, this phone has no case on it already. So we'll see if there is a case inside of the box. Looks like there actually is none. Okay. Paperwork, SIM ejector, charger, and a cable, and that's all we get. So let's just throw that to the side. The charger is a 10-watt charger. So there we go. You can see it now. Didn't want to actually take that off. Whatever. So yeah, 10-watt charger, and a cable is type A to type C. There we go. Now here we got the phone. So we have a side-mounted fingerprint sensor, volume rockers also on the left side, SIM tray on the top left side, and it has a SD tray along with two SIM trays, each dedicated for its own card. So there we go. Now while it's turning on, let's quickly touch upon the display itself. So this is a 6.5-inch display, 720 by 1600, so not necessarily the highest resolution right here, but this is a budget device coming at around 140 euros. So like I said, a budget device. Now obviously because of that you're looking at only LCD display, but surprisingly it's running at 90 Hertz, so that's actually pretty nice. It might not be running at 90 Hertz by default, although it actually might be on by default. Never mind. So there we go. Now once I finish up the setup, I'm going to quickly touch upon the crappy camera setup that is at the back. Not now, and done. So there we go. So flipping it over, you can see we have a double camera setup, and the main sensor is a 16 megapixel wide, and then we have a 2 megapixel depth sensor. Now normally I would say that the 2 megapixel depth sensor is a sticker camera, but honestly 16 and 2, and they're not far off, and this phone is budget, so honestly I'm not gonna complain right here. It might improve photo quality in some way, the depth sensor. Usually it's used by portrait. So what I'm gonna say is, when you capture a portrait photos and you see some kind of like weird blur halo effect around your hair, then usually that is created by the depth sensor. So if that bothers you, just don't use portrait. It's kind of stupid that I need to say don't use some feature of the phone if you want to have a better photo, but in this case going with just the normal photo mode in here will ensure that you're not using the depth sensor, meaning you won't have that wonky blur effect around. The blur effect is just kind of trying to imitate a bokeh effect from like an actual camera, but obviously at 2 megapixels that's probably not enough information to do it correctly. So there we go. So if it bothers you, if it's even a thing on the photos, then that's probably because of the depth sensor, and all you would need to do is just use the normal photo to get rid of that problem. Now anyway, moving on to the front, we have a 5 megapixel sensor right here in this little teardrop, and moving on into the internals right here, we have a 32 gigabyte storage with 3 gigs of RAM, or 64 gigabyte storage with 4 gigs of RAM. Now when it comes down to this phone, I would probably recommend going for the higher model, the 64 with 4 gigs. This will most certainly make your life a little bit easier. 64 gigs of storage will, number one, ensure that all the applications that need to be installed on the phone storage itself will just be there, and not give you any fuss that you're running out of storage or stuff like that. And 4 gigs of RAM will ensure that you can also run apps comfortably without them running out of RAM and starting to chug a little bit on your entire device. So I would recommend going for the higher model if that is a possibility for you. Now, this entire device is being powered by MediaTek processor, so this is the MT6765V. So I will be honest, I have no idea how good this processor is, but obviously the price range is at low end, so expect performance that would represent the price range. So in general, right now I can kind of see sometimes it just does weirdness where it just starts like doing this slowdowns. So you can see it when I was pulling it down. Now it's fine. Yeah, right now it's fine. Oh, there we go. So you just seen this kind of like this weird movement. So the processor isn't necessarily the fastest to do the job, but honestly, it's doing a pretty okay job. I guess nowadays most of the phones can run Android in some respectable way. They might not be doing it super smoothly, but it's nowhere near what phones used to be back in the day. So this one, if you're looking for a phone that I guess works and is cheap to the point that you can probably drop it in the ocean and never look back for it, then obviously it will do the job. Now, last thing would be the just general build. We have a plastic frame, at least the outside of it. This, I believe, is, I was gonna say glass. It kind of looks like glass, but it's written that it's also plastic back. So I do have to say it does look and feel like glass, but it's plastic apparently. So there we go. And obviously we got a glass front. I don't really see what kind of rating it is, so I don't see any kind of corner, gorilla or anything like that. Now moving on, in the plastic frame we do have a headphone jack, so you can plug in your wired cans without any kind of problem right here. At the bottom we have our charging port, our microphone and our speakers, along with SIM tray on the top left side. Now, like I popped it out before, you could see we have 2 SIM card trays on there and a SD tray. So when it comes down to the storage that I mentioned before, you can expand it further using an SD card. But like I also mentioned before, you have the 2 options with 3 or 4 gigs of RAM. Those are also locked into the storage. So the reason why I recommend going for the 64 gigs is because it primarily has the 4 gigs of RAM, which is more important in my opinion. But storage is also pretty nice to have, even though you might pop in an SD card. Having just the default storage a little bit higher might just remove those problems that you might sometimes see from having a phone with a low amount of storage, where you install apps that needs to be installed on the actual like device, not on the SD card. So as an example, I believe bank applications do that, where they tell you that you only can install them on like the phone, and there's a plethora of other ones. So when you fill up that storage, it will start bugging you that the storage is full and give you some problems with it. So it's easier just to have a little bit more storage and make your life a little bit easier later on once you fill it up. Now, last thing here to say, the battery size in this phone, you can see it's quite slim. It's 4020 milliamp hour battery and 10 watt charger. Obviously you've seen that before, so you're not going to be getting any kind of like super fast charging of any kind of sorts. Probably full charge above 2 hours. Keep that in mind. So it's not going to be charging super fast. And that's basically all there is to say about the device. I'm going to check one more thing, which I consider to be a nice feature, but I already can see that it's probably not here. Yep, so there is no NFC unfortunately, so you won't be able to pay with the phone if you wanted to do that. So anyway, this would conclude the just overview of the device. For a €140 phone, it's okay. I don't have any problems with it. It's not going to be winning any kind of speed contest right here. Obviously phones at this price range are just usually bought to because you don't have any other alternatives. In this kind of category, for 140 euros, you might find some other phones that, for instance, would have 5G, though they might be like 10 to 20 euros more. Probably won't have a higher refresh rate like this one does. So at the end of the day, you might want to pick and choose what features you're really looking for, and in a budget range like this one, you will basically be looking at different phones that offer different features, like I said, 5G or higher screen refresh rates, or maybe better processor, or maybe just better cameras. But you won't be really looking for all of the things at once. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna also add a little bit of a kind of like an eye opener, or however you want to call it. So considering this costs about 140 euros, you can probably get a old flagship for about the same price. So as an example, if you feel comfortable, something like a Huawei Mate 10 Pro exactly will cost you, I believe, somewhere about the same price, and it will perform better than this. Probably also will perform better with cameras. Same goes for any kind of like Samsung's S6, S7, maybe even S8, though S8 might be already like way above the price range here. But if you know how to look for used phones, then that would be great alternative, just because they will most likely outperform at this phone. And this phone generally does not offer any kind of like features that are above old flagships, apart from the 90 Hz refresh rate, but that is the only thing. Now, additionally, one thing that I'll mention for people that might get a light bulb lit up above their head right now, the old flagships, the downside of them is, number one, you do need to have some modicum of knowledge of how to look for them. Some people will most likely try to scam you, sell you some phone that might have something damaged inside of it, or some part of it doesn't really work. So when buying such a phone, you might want to just for the first couple days, just check everything, if everything works, if photos come out good, if the display is all functioning, if the battery lasts just like some reasonable amount of time, and so on. And obviously, one major drawback will be the fact you won't have most likely any kind of warranty anymore, because it's an old flagship. They don't have warranty anymore, while it's a new phone, it's a budget phone, but it has warranty. So if something happens to it, you can usually get it fixed, repaired, or replaced without much of a problem, assuming the fault wasn't on your side. So anyway, with that being said, hopefully this gave you some kind of insight into purchasing your phone, and if you found this very helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.